All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review. In our latest RBT Exam practice series, we're going through the next set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Be sure and check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. As always, when you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shoutout. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Josie attends a party where everyone is drinking out of wine glasses. To avoid confusion, the host of the party gives everyone a small trinket to hook onto their wine glass. No two trinkets are alike. The trinkets are going to help the guest with what when finding their wine glass? So we're looking at something that these trinkets are going to aid in with these guests when trying to find their wine glass. And whenever you think about this question and questions like this, what you need to consider is, what are we trying to accomplish, right? What are we trying to get the guest to be able to do? Well, we know that everyone is drinking out of wine glasses, and we want to avoid confusion. So the host of the party gives everyone a small trinket. So how are those trinkets going to help avoid confusion when guests are looking for their wine glass? A, generalization. Is generalization going to help with this particular scenario? Well, not really. It's one trinket on the guest one glass in this controlled environment. If they can't generalize this to other environments, we're not really worried about that. We're worried about this party in the moment with this one trinket. What about B, differentiation? Well, differentiation, remember, also is response differentiation. It's a longer way to say it. And with response differentiation, we're looking at different types of responses. We're not worried about the responses here. What we're worried about is them grabbing the right glass. So if we're worried about what stimulus they're grabbing, we're really concerned with discrimination or stimulus discrimination. The trinkets are going to help the guest discriminate between wine glasses, because if nobody had a trinket, then the wine glasses tend to all look the same. If somebody has a trinket that looks different than mine, that trinket is going to prompt me and help me out with discrimination. And then D, functional communication. We're not communicating anything here, right? And now the trinkets are prompting to the guest, hey, this is your wine glass, but the guests aren't really communicating that with one another. What we're trying to do is improve the guest ability to discriminate between wine glasses. So what are they going to help with? C, discrimination. You always want to ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish? What am I trying to achieve using this intervention or using this stimulus? This, in this case, the trinket. What are we trying to do? A student learned how to analyze data using a program called SPSS in the spring. The student then took a month off during the summer. When the student came back, they found that they were unable to perform many of the tasks they were able to perform in the spring. What likely occurred? What likely occurred? Kind of an ambiguous, open-ended question. Well, when you get a question like that, you've got to consider, what is the question summing up, right? What is all the information in the question trying to get at? And a question like this is a good example of why we don't immediately jump to the answer choices. We always make sure we understand the question first. So we know a student learned how to analyze data using a program called SPSS in the spring. The student took a month off during the summer. When the student came back, they were unable to perform many of the tasks they could in the spring. So they learned how to do something in the spring. It took a month off from learning in the summer. When they came back, they can no longer do all these things they were able to do in the spring. What does that sound like to you? A, regression. Remember, we don't use regression in a technical standpoint, okay? Regression is not a technical word, right? If you're going to use regression, what you're usually referring to is a lack of maintenance, when a skill has not maintained. Remember, maintenance occurs when a skill stops appearing, or we can't evoke a skill anymore, or someone can't do something they could before after teaching has stopped. So since this student took a whole month off during the summer and stopped learning and stopped working on it, they were unable to maintain their skills. So skills were not maintained. C, skills did not generalize. Well, we're not sure. We don't know exactly where the student can and cannot do data analysis using SPSS. We just know they're no longer able to perform some of the skills that they were prior to taking the month off during summer. And then D, skills overgeneralized. Well, the skill or the data analysis isn't happening in the wrong location. It's just not happening, period, right? The skills aren't happening, period. They're unable to maintain these skills that they were once able to do prior to taking the month off during the summer. So when skills go away, once teaching stops, we call that a failure to maintain. And we always want skills to maintain because we can't constantly teach everything. Eventually, we need to stop teaching and move on. So we want skills to maintain. That's one of our goals. Jack and Jill are discussing plans for the weekend. They're debating on whether or not they should go to a bar with their friends or go hiking in the woods. Jack checks the weather report and sees that there is a high chance of rain, so they decide to go to the bar. What was the consequence of choosing to go to the bar relative to the rain? Think about this. What is the question asking? There's a lot of different moving parts here. They're asking about the consequence, okay, the outcome, the result of choosing to go to the bar relative to the rain. Essentially, what have Jack and Jill accomplished? And what is the consequence of Jack and Jill deciding we're going to go to the bar based on the rain? Well, you have to ask yourself, when they found out rain was coming, what did that signal to them? Well, it signaled to them that there's a chance that punishment is now available if they go hiking. Because when you look at the weather report, it says it's going to rain. And if you see that it's going to rain, and then you go hiking, the consequence is likely that you're going to get rained on. So the weather report is now saying punishment is available for going hiking. So by choosing to go to the bar, what have Jack and Jill done relative to the rain? Well, they've avoided the rain, okay? And if you look at A, escape from the rain, you might ask, well, what's the difference between escape and avoidance? And when we talk about functions, usually we just say escape, but there is a difference. Escape is when a stimulus is already present, and then you're able to get away from it or remove it. Avoidance, you're avoiding the presentation of the stimulus. So in this case, they haven't yet gotten rained on, right? They're not getting rained on. What they're doing is avoiding the rain falling on them. If they were actively getting rained on and then they found shelter, that would be escape. And that's technical, right? That's very specific. But remember, the more specific you can get, the better off you're going to be. So they didn't escape the rain, but they did avoid the rain. Now, yes, they did hang out at the bar, but the question asked, what was the consequence relative to the rain? So you've got to look in the context of the rain. And relative to the rain, they were able to avoid it by going to the bar instead. You take your son to the doctor after your son started pulling on his ear. You think it might be an ear infection. You get to the doctor and the doctor asks, how many times per hour does your son pull on his ear? What is your doctor asking about relative to ear pulling? All right, we're talking about the doctor's behavior asking you something, and it's in relation to ear pulling. So what do we know? Remember, always do all your work up front. Do it in the question. You took your son to the doctor because your son was pulling on his ear. You think it might be an ear infection, okay? The doctor says, how many times per hour does your son pull on his ear? And that's the key. How many times per hour does your son pull on his ear? So what is the doctor asking about? A, frequency. So part of it's frequency, right? Because he wants to know how many times ear pulling occurs. But he also wants to know how many times with a specific time component. And so when we have frequency plus a time component, it's not just frequency. What do we call that? Well, we call that rate. Rate is frequency over time, right? Frequency per time. So how many times per hour he's looking for rate. He's not looking for latency. He's not looking for time in between an SD and the ear pulling. And he's not looking for duration. He's not asking how long the ear pulling occurs. He's asking about how often relative or per hour does your son pull on his ear. So he's asking frequency per time based on ear pulling. So the doctor is asking about D, rate. A behavior technician is enrolled in an applied behavior analysis master's program in pursuit of her board certification. The behavior technician starts telling the families she works with that she is a behavior analyst. Is this allowed? Now, a lot of behavior technicians, after a while of being a behavior technician, or sometimes they already know they want to do it, but they want to pursue their BCBA, which is fantastic, right? Everybody think it's a great goal for all technicians if you enjoy this work. However, you are still a technician until you're not, meaning until you've sat for that BCBA exam and passed the exam, you're a technician. And the board specifies that in the code that you're not allowed to represent yourself otherwise. So this technician who's enrolled in this master's program in pursuit of her certification, that's great, but she can't start telling families that she's a behavior analyst. She's not, right? She's not a board certified behavior analyst quite yet. Okay. Now, it's a little muddy, right? Because in context, maybe she's referring to the fact that she's a behavior analyst and since she analyzes behavior. But if she's claiming, right, that she's a board certified behavior analyst or she's already a behavior analyst, that is not allowed. You can't misrepresent yourself as something you aren't. Until you have that certification, it's not allowed. So yes, as long as she is enrolled in classes and has board approval. Well, the board is not going to approve her of representing herself as a BCBA until she is actually a BCBA. B, no, but she can claim she is a behavior analyst intern. She can't do that either, okay? You can't represent yourself as a BCBA any form and use those words and those terms until you've actually passed your exam. C, no, you cannot represent yourself as a behavior analyst without the certification. Yes. Now, again, we're viewing behavior analysts because this is a teaching question, and in the view that she's telling people, I'm a BCBA, essentially, right? Now, it's a little muddier if you're just saying I'm a behavior analyst and not claiming to be board certified. But even then, that's very close to misrepresenting yourself. And I would consider that misrepresenting yourself as a whole. So you really can't represent yourself as that at all. You're still a technician until you're not. And then D, it depends on if she has permission from her supervisor. Well, no, it's in the code. We can't misrepresent ourselves. So even if you think there's a gray area between a board certified behavior analyst and a behavior analyst, it's better to err on the side of caution and not misrepresent yourself at all. Now, it's a great thing she's pursuing her board certification. She's probably very skilled, but remember, we have to follow the ethical code. I have to, everybody does, right? So whether you agree or not, it's not for us to decide. Because as certified people under the BACB, we've got to follow their code. It's just what's required of us. Maxine is teaching her client to say their name or request. Maxine asks the client, what is your favorite color? What is your favorite food? And who is your mom? Which the client responds to routinely prior to asking their name. What intervention is Maxine using? All right, if you've been studying a while or if you're already somewhat fluent, this question, I think, should be rather easy. We're looking at Maxine, teaching a client to say their name. First, Maxine says, what is your favorite color? What is your favorite food? Who is your mom? And we know the client responds to that routinely, meaning these are high probability requests. And then she does what? She asks their name, which is the low probability request. So what intervention is she using? Well, the high P request sequence. Remember, the pre-MAC principle is almost the reverse. With the pre-MAC principle, you're requiring the learner to engage in the low probability response, and you're using the high probability activity or engagement as a reinforcer. So we know she's using a high P request sequence. Is she also using an antecedent intervention? Well, she is, because a high P request sequence is also considered an antecedent intervention because it's proactive. It's acting on the response prior to the response occurring, right? It's coming before the response. So she's using a high P sequence and an antecedent intervention. So what is she using? Well, both B and C. A golfer wants to improve his confidence in putting the ball into the hole. He makes a custom hole that is twice as large as the normal hole and practices using the hole for a week. He then reduces the size of the hole slightly and practices for another week. He does this until the hole is at the normal size. What type of prompting is this? So he's prompting himself, right? Because he needs the standard sized hole to become the SD, right? For making the putt and putting at the hole. But right now he's using a bigger and bigger and bigger hole. Okay. And so he makes a custom hole that's twice as large. He then reduces the size and does that. And then he goes all the way down to the normal size. So what type of prompting is he using? A, least to most prompting. Well, with least to most, you would start with errorless prompting, right? And work your way up. He's not changing the type of prompt. Okay. He's still using the same sort of prompt, except he's reducing the size smaller and smaller. So he's changing the stimulus directly, right? But he's not going up and down the hierarchy of prompts. So he's not least to most or most to least. He's also not using a gestural prompt. He's not gesturing at himself. He's not indicating to himself using gestures. What he's doing, he's acting directly on the stimulus, right? The size of this hole. So he's using a stimulus prompt. He's reducing the size until he gets to the normal size. And hopefully the normal size cup acts as the SD for putting the ball into the hole, getting the ball into the hole, or making the right stroke to get the ball into the hole. You're talking with your client's parents and mention that your birthday is coming up this weekend. The following Monday, they surprise you with a $50 Amazon gift card. Can you accept this gift? Can you accept this gift? Remember, the gift rules have changed with the latest ethical update, right? Prior to this new ethics update, we couldn't accept any gift whatsoever. New stipulations say what? New stipulations say the gift has to be $10 or less, and it cannot be routine. So it's essentially saying holidays and special occasions, you can accept small items. In this case, it's your birthday, and they surprise you with a $50 Amazon gift card. So what's the issue here? Well, the issue is the amount, right? If they got you a $5, $10 Starbucks gift card, technically you would be okay as long as it's not routine, right? However, $50 is too much. So can you accept it? A, yes, since this gift is not routine. Well, that's not the issue necessarily, right? The issue is the amount. So what we're looking at is B, no, the gift is over $10. You can't take it. C, no, you can never accept gifts from clients. Not anymore. Now there are certain situations where you can. So the problem here is the amount. So no, since the gift is over $10. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. As always, let us know when you pass. Like, subscribe, and we will see you soon.